Part 51. Global Copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 501. Ahem, dear readers, I am your little one, a crybaby boy with bad luck. The book Fengling Yueying was officially completed yesterday, with a word count of around 1.1 million words. To be honest, it's not easy. Because at first I didn't expect that I would write such a long article. Of course, for those big guys, writing a novel with 1 million words must be easy, but for an author who has always struggled with the beginning, this first 1 million-word novel is obviously of extraordinary significance. That's why I will write a final statement after finishing the book. I also want to thank all the handsome readers who were able to watch until the end for their strong support. About 2 bows. 3 bows. This review after finishing this book is mainly divided into 3 parts to briefly talk about my feelings along the way and a summary of the follow-up. Although I know that everyone is not very interested in this nonsense, I still want to talk about it a little bit, which is considered correct. Tell me your first 1 million-word novel. In the first part, let's talk about the shortcomings of this book. First of all, the first point is that the subsequent story is a bit messy, and many contents are a bit hasty and abrupt. This is because the writing power of Xiaopoja at the end is indeed not enough, which is a sign of being unable to control the plot. The second is that many of the storylines are too one-sided and sloppy, and not impressive enough. Well, I can only practice more on this, because I find that the plots that I can describe with all my heart are generally not well received. Either it's watery or it's not good looking, so let me fast forward directly. Manual Doghead. This is also the direction that Xiaopushi needs to continue to work hard. The third point is that I know in my heart that there are many minefields in this book, and many people were dissuaded by the minefields in the early stage. I will work harder to avoid minefields in the next book, and everyone can also read it. Write down the plots you hate to watch or the plots you like to watch in the comments, so that Xiaopoja can refer to them. Thank you. Of course the serious ones, forget the non-serious ones. The last point, and the point that everyone is complaining about, is that this book seems to have ended too hastily. This little bastard has to admit that this is the case. Yes. You can be strong even if you are not straightforward. JPG. Due to some reasons in real life, most of Xiaopoja's energy was distracted. The final conception of this book did seem to be too hasty. Although the main plot has a beginning and an end, and the pitfalls that need to be filled in are almost filled, many of them are touched upon in one go, which may lead to some readers not having a good experience. Of course, I cannot help but express my gratitude to my editor, Dada, who answered Xiaopoja's questions seriously and responsibly, and the artist Kukajiang who carefully crafted the cover for me. The last point is to once again thank everyone for their support, and more shamelessly ask everyone to continue to support Xiaopoja's next creation. The results of this book obviously exceeded Xiaopoja's original expectations. Keep it secret for now, hee. Thank you. Therefore, people often complain that Xiaopoja keeps up with current events, without saving manuscripts, and is manually funny. Maybe Xiaopoja will decide it's you in a flash of inspiration. Manual Doghead. So to be able to persevere until now, I really want to thank you all for your strong support. You are my biggest motivation to keep updating. The premise is that Xiaopoja handles the things at hand so that he can concentrate. The third part is to talk about the next trend of Xiaopoja. As for the content, 8 months, more than 200 days of persistence, day after day, the hardships involved cannot be appreciated by outsiders. I also hope that all of you pretty guys will be considerate. Xiaopoja also tells everyone, it's a showdown, no more pretense. My Timo's novel manuscript fee is enough to pay half the year's rent. It even includes water and electricity in the next 6 months. The second part is about the gains from this book. This book was prepared from mid-February 2023 to the end of October now. It was a full 8 months. Of course, if you have content you want to see, you can also tell Xiaopoja as a reference. Readers who know Xiaopoja should know that when the book was first published, Xiaopoja almost never missed the comments on this book, and each one was seriously replied to. This habit continued until the book was 300,000 words long. Ahem, to be honest, Xiaopoja's original intention of writing this book was simply because life was a bit stressful, and he planned to make some bad money at Tomato and pay the rent while working hard. Xiaopoja is already imagining it, and if nothing goes wrong, the new book will be available to everyone in November. This is also the reason why Xiaopoja decided to write a side story. So in the future, only readers who caught up with me to update the first few chapters will see the likes and occasional comments from Xiaopoja. Well, I must tell you here that this book is the first book written by Xiaopoja on Tomato. Xiaopoja is a serious new author. Are you surprised or surprised? Of course, when it comes to harvest, income is indispensable. Actually, it has not been decided after all. It is the editor who reviews the manuscript. Which manuscript passes the review at that time will decide which one to write. Well, a more important reason may be that I am too lazy. This is the point, right? The second is about the next book. First of all, the extra chapters of this book will be completed one after another, including some of the questions you asked, which will be answered in the extra chapters. Of course, I did learn a lot of useful knowledge, experience, and lessons during the writing process, which are the cornerstones that spur my growth. As of now, my biggest reward is all the handsome readers. Xiaopoja has to work during the day, update novels at night, and find time to catch up on TV dramas and use Douyin. Ahem, don't get me wrong, this is not doing your job properly, this is to not deviate from the times, and to stay in the book to present better and more exciting content. The reason for Xiaopok Street is that due to real-life events, I have to finish this book in advance, because I can't guarantee the update speed in the future. I can only wait for my work here to be finished, and then come back and use the form of an extra chapter. Fill in the previously unclear contents and regrets one by one. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 502. Within the Secret Realm. I can cooperate with you, but you have to agree to 3 conditions. Lu Zhaoqi smiled and waved 3 fingers in front of He Mingxian. This made He Mingxuan's mouth twitch involuntarily. Is there any mistake? One's own people still make demands, which is too much. But thinking about it, the 2 of them are going to sever ties, and they have caused him to suffer such a big loss. It seems that making some demands is considered a beaver. Thinking of this, He Mingxian nodded and said helplessly, you say, as long as it doesn't go too far, I will agree to it. Lu Zhaoqi had long expected that he would agree. After all, it is me. Even if I have darkened a lot, I still can't change my original personality. He didn't mention any particularly harsh conditions, but just said, first, I want you to withdraw from the world I live in immediately, and promise to never invade. He Mingxian nodded indifferently, this is simple. When he reached his current level, the connected worlds were like countless sands. Giving up such a small world that was already on the verge of decay, and decay meant almost zero loss to him. I'm quitting now. He Mingxian just thought, and the fog that had spread wildly in Lu Zhaoqi's world began to quickly fade away. Lu Zhaoqi nodded and then made the next request. He released Diji, who had been following him, and said with a smile, you should know about her, right? He Mingxian glanced at Ji Lan, making her feel like she was facing a formidable enemy. How could Diji not recognize her greatest enemy in this life? Although I have never seen his true face, that aura is all too familiar. What shocked her was that the enemy she had thought about for countless days and months actually looked so similar to Lu Zhaoqi. You. Diji's face flashed with expressions of hatred, shock, suspicion, and disbelief. However, neither Lu Zhaoqi nor He Mingxian paid much attention to her. Before she could say anything more, He Mingxian smiled and said, "Of course, this little girl used the golden cicadas method to escape from my control. It was an eye-opener for me and is still fresh in my memory." Lu Zhaoqi nodded, not surprised by He Mingxian's words. He had long realized that the Digi following him might not be as simple as a clone. He pointed at Ji Lan and said calmly, "I want you to give her world back." Lu Zhaoqi paused, then continued, "There are also those creatures in her world that were corrupted by you." Ji Lan. She looked at Lu Zhaoqi intently, feeling ashamed that she had just doubted his thoughts. This. He Mingxian glanced at Lu Zhaoqi a little embarrassed. "It's not that you can't do a loss-making business, but if you eat something that has been completely digested in your stomach, you still want him to vomit it out completely." It was really a bit difficult for him. But at his level, changing the world and reshaping the world is just a trivial matter. Although there is no way to return the world completely, when he thought about it, he immediately came up with a remedy plan. "Her world has been completely swallowed up by me. If you want me to give it back, it will only be possible if the world is reversed." He Mingxian replied. After hearing his words, Diji's eyes darkened, feeling that her hope was shattered, and then she stared at He Mingxian with extremely hateful eyes, wishing to eat him alive immediately and cut him into pieces with 1,000 knives. But He Mingxian understood her expression and continued. "Let's do this. There is a small world that is growing in your body. I will inject the remaining aura into your small world, and the creatures controlled by me will also be sealed in it. As time goes by, your little world slowly grows, and they will naturally break the seal and awaken again. How about it?" The small world in Lu Zhaoqi's body that He Mingxian mentioned undoubtedly refers to the Pure Land of Ultimate Bliss. It was originally just a city, but after it was integrated with the Star Core and upgraded several times with Lu Zhaoqi, it already had the rectangular shape of a world. It's not an exaggeration to call it a small world. Lu Zhaoqi didn't say anything, just turned her head and looked at Ji Lan beside her. Ji Yan's eyes burst out with unspeakable surprise. She nodded hurriedly, this was the best ending she could imagine. But when he looked at He Mingxian again, his expression was still complicated. The law of survival is that the weak eat the strong. This is understandable, but as the one being swallowed, it is obviously impossible for her to understand He Mingxian. Although people have promised to return her, all of Galen's lost relatives and friends will return to her as time goes by. But the pain caused by it is indelible for a while. All right. Seeing that Ji Lan had no objection, Lu Zhaoqi naturally nodded in agreement. As He Mingxian used his methods again, countless world auras and divine souls were released from his body and slowly injected into the Pure Land of Bliss where Lu Zhaoqi's body was located. After receiving this sudden supply, the cute foodie who was still in the city and had eaten his fill of Godhead fragments suddenly woke up from his deep sleep. Its originally petite and exquisite body was as if it had eaten golden garbage. Its treasury increased sharply, almost doubling its previous size in the blink of an eye. In just a few breaths, her height had changed from the size of a fist to that of a child of about 10 years old. Moreover, her eyebrows seemed to have opened a lot, and she felt as if she had grown up several years. Her originally innocent and ignorant demeanor suddenly became more agile, and she seemed to understand a lot of truth, and her bare flat figure also had a woman's appearance. Curve. Now, if Lu Zhaoqi wants to deceive others, it will probably be a lot more difficult. After doing all this, He Mingxian was also a little tired, and even his body was much more transparent than before. After all, what he came here was not his true body, but just a fragment of his soul. Okay, tell me your third request. He urged Lu Zhaoqi, I don't have much time to stay here. My third request. Lu Zhaoqi lengthened her voice and said with a bad smile on her face, then I ask you to agree to 3 more requests of mine. He Mingxian. Good guy. Don't go too far, Kid. Leave it here for me to fix the bug. With a dark face, he looked at this guy who was much more handsome than him, and the corners of his mouth twitched. Okay, actually I haven't figured out what the third request is yet. How about you owe it first? Luzaoki shrugged. I owe it to your sister. Why should I mention it when I haven't thought about it yet? He Mingxian roared unbearably. He suddenly realized how could this guy be more out of place than himself? You don't seem that outrageous, do you? Could it be that there was a mutation during the separation process? From this point of view, it is a good thing that he does not return to his true self. After all, a serious person like himself does not want to be influenced by this guy. Aren't these 3 requests more handsome and reasonable? Luzaoki muttered, aren't there 3 wishes or 3 requests in the story? He smiled and said, okay, it's settled, let's get started. You owe me this request first. Luzaoki is not stupid, he is quite experienced. He Mingxuan's strength has not yet broken through, and is even just a step above Luzaoki. Using Fengling Yueying, Luzaoki could compete with the opponent. The request made now is of absolutely no value to Luzaoki. It would be better to wait until he takes that crucial step and his strength is greatly improved before Luzaoki brings up another matter that is within his capabilities. As for whether the other party would regret it, Luzaoki was not worried at all. At their current state, it can be said that their words come true. As long as you agree to do something, you will definitely do it. Otherwise, if you have a bad intention, you will not be able to achieve enlightenment. Luzaoki believed that he Mingxian could tell the difference between what was light and what was serious. Ma Dan. You think I'm the wish-making dragon from across the street, right? He Mingxian naturally saw his little thoughts and said helplessly, okay, let's get started. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 503. Oops. The 3-foot-high Lupapi walked out of the secret realm with satisfaction, but his expression suddenly changed. It was like he suddenly came from a vacuum environment into the deep sea thousands of meters below. Countless pressures rushed towards him from all directions, as if they were going to crush him and squeeze him flat. Only then did he remember that in order to deal with this crisis, he had completely let go of his hands and feet, resulting in his cultivation reaching a level equivalent to the Hideo level, far beyond the limit that this world can accommodate. What Luzaoki feels now is that this world can no longer bear him and is trying hard to expel him. Then, Luzaoki is too big. It's stuck. It's like being constipated. Although this description is inappropriate, it is surprisingly appropriate. Although Luzaoki's face looked as ugly as an indescribable mess, he had to admit it. Although he already has the strength to fight against this world, it would not be a good thing for him or the world to remain in such a stalemate. Forget it. Luzaoki shook her head, a little helpless. The next moment, his soul separated and he cut himself tens of thousands of times in an instant. When he originally reached the realm of enlightenment, his cultivation shrank like a punctured little balloon. In the blink of an eye, he changed from a giant of Hideo who saw everything to a rookie at the peak of his soul. And those distracted minds who inherited most of his cultivation were swept away by the world that was ready to take off. It's a pity that my car is dead. Luzaoki shook her head and said regretfully to herself. Otherwise, I can make up for the lost cultivation level in a minute if I want. But. Then he laughed again. In comparison, I still prefer staying here. As he spoke, he opened his hands and made a gesture of embracing the world. My friend is cute, Luzaoki, am so fat. Luzaoki, who was still taking out something, felt distracted for a moment as if time had been frozen, and the next moment the surrounding scenes shattered like a mirror. He instantly appeared in a deserted ghost place. Good guy. Where did this move me? It doesn't look like another world, does it? Luzioki was distracted and muttered to herself. This dog's body is doing everything for me every day. So annoying. Because his distraction appeared relatively early, the cultivation level assigned to him was the least among the other distractions. At this moment, he could barely break through the cultivation level of Yuan Shen and reach the level of transcending tribulation. You see, if you say CAO CAO, CAO CAO will come. Just as we were talking about overcoming the tribulation, didn't this thunder tribulation just come? A dark cloud quickly gathered over Luzioki's distracted head, only collectively known as number 1. Pants. A series of bright white, white with blue, blue with purple, purple with black thunder, smashed down towards number 1. Looking at the terrifyingly powerful 5-color divine thunder, no one's face became as colorful as if he had opened a dyeing workshop. I'm going to give you such a warm greeting gift when I first arrived. Is it so exciting? Boom boom boom. What responded to him was a series of violent explosions. Although he lost the blessing of his natural ability, Luzioki's terrifying passivity was perfectly inherited by number 1. The devastation of this heaven-destroying divine thunder only left number 1 unable to fight back, but it was unable to do anything to him. Finally, number 1 raised a firm middle finger, and Leiji reluctantly dispersed. And number 1 also fell into a deep sleep due to heavy consumption. I don't know how much time passed. Number 1 suddenly heard a rustling sound coming from his ears. Brother Zhang, look, it was a crisp female voice. There's actually someone here. Hey, this guy is so shameless, he has no clothes on, the man's calm voice revealed a hint of disgust. But he's covered in black and it's so dark that you can't even tell. Let's take him back, the female voice said. Okay, the male voice replied lovingly. Although number 1 has severed the connection with his true body, because Luzioki once refined the 5-color divine stone, he is now a self-contained entity. Unless he consumes too much and cannot maintain even the most basic body shape, he can continuously restore his own mana. So it didn't take long for him to completely regain consciousness and slowly opened his eyes. What caught his eye was a pretty face that was young and familiar. She smiled very slyly, "You're awake. The operation was successful, you are now a girl." Mom, number 1 was stunned for a moment and blurted out a motherly voice. Hey, the girl responded, and then muttered, this is not because I took advantage of you and lied to you. You called it yourself. Xian, the boy next to him couldn't see it, and immediately shouted to stop the girl who sounded and looked like Luzioki's adoptive mother. The girl stuck out her tongue and quickly hid behind the man, sticking her head out to observe no one's reaction. At this time, number 1 discovered that the man in front of him, apart from being a bit green, also looked exactly like his adoptive father, Lu Zhang. This is... Number 1 was horrified. He struggled to sit up, glanced at his surroundings, and found a very simple house. Everything around is very shabby, except for the on the door, which is brand new. But it was crooked, as if it were handmade by a poor artist. We are scavengers. We found you in the wild and brought you back. The person who looked exactly like Lu Zhang said, by the way, my name is Lu Zhang, and this is my wife Lu Xian. What is your name? No. 1. Well, my special meow was actually sent through time by the power of the big world. And it's like turning back time. Hello, forget it, just call me number 1. Number 1 swallowed the word Luzioki when it came to his lips. He looked around and said slowly, excuse me, what time is it now? It's almost 11:30. If you wake up any later, you will miss lunch. Lu Xian interrupted. Number 1 shook his head, no, I mean, what year, month and day is it now? The primary goal now is to find out from the two people how long they have turned back time. Lu Zhang stared at number 1 as if he were a fool, and casually told number 1 the year and month, etc. This date, could it be said? Number 1 was shocked. Then he seemed to think of something again and started rummaging through the parcel column. Without the blessing of innate abilities, no one's package column is no different from ordinary people. Soon he saw what he was looking for. It is a complete crystal nucleus. His eyes suddenly became strange. I see. This is how the strength of adoptive parents comes from. Unexpectedly, I became a part of history that was supposed to happen.